Just sticking in the metals and mining space, uranium mining has come into focus once again as companies seek to produce low-emission electricity. In most states of Australia, mining of uranium is still banned, but Western Australia has recently approved 4 uranium projects, and New South Wales is set to lift its ban in the coming months. Now, one company that's poised to take advantage of all the change afoot is Vimy Resources. And to tell us more about what's going on there, Mike Young joins us now. Mike, welcome to the program. Great to have you here. I understand there's a bit of a milestone happening right now in terms of environment management plans in WA. Get us across the latest news.
Sure. So we announced this morning that we have received approval for what are called our conditional environmental management plans. They were part of the conditions when we received our public environmental review, and we completed those yesterday. So this is very good timing to be talking about it. And those plans are basically, they describe the emissions and what we're allowed to do while we go forward with the project. So now the next set of approvals for us is to go through the mining proposal and the mining approvals and things like that. But these are really important to get these plans, and it really is a shot in the arm for us, and we can move forward with the project.
Okay, so I think that I've probably skipped too far ahead because the Mulga Rock project is what we're talking about here. You recently had a DFS refresh. Can you tell us why this project is a good one, why this project is potentially better and more economical than some others out there?
Well, the first thing is it's in Australia. And when you look at the largest market for uranium in the world, that is the United States, they're about 30% of the global market, 20% of their electricity is from nuclear power, and it's in fact 55% of their clean energy. It's an important strategic asset for them. And so where they get the uranium matters, from an ESG point of view, but also security of supply. And Australia is the number one jurisdiction for them. And we know that because we have discussions with the US utilities all the time. The project itself is out past Kalgoorlie. It's about 240 k's east of Kalgoorlie. It's a large, lowish grade operation, but actually quite simple to mine. It's flat lying. And so the economics of it are quite good. And we are globally in the middle of the pack in terms of what we call our all-in sustaining cost. And that's the comparable you use across the industry. And the cost for our operation is comparable to some of the higher cost operations in Kazakhstan. And they are viewed by people as being the cheapest operations in the world. So to have that comparison is really quite important.
Okay, and how about the mine life? I mean, what's the potential mine life there?
Sure. So that's 15 years. We'll be producing 3.5 million pounds of uranium a year. And to put that in context for your listeners, that's that'll power about 8 1 gigawatt reactors. So that's quite a lot of uranium that we'll be producing. And then we have the potential to extend that for another 5 years with some more drilling, which we'll do out of cash flow. We don't need to do that now. And we also have another project in Northern Territory that could dovetail nicely into that. So we could have the potential for 25-year plus operations going on.
Cost money, as you just referenced, to get this all going and continuing. I understand you've been looking for strategic investors or partners to help accelerate the development of these 2 flagship projects. So what's the status update there?
So we announced yesterday, we've actually had 3 announcements in a row. We announced yesterday that KPMG will be coming on board to assist us with that process. So what that's about is it's about optionality. Our team certainly has the capacity to go alone on this. And if the uranium economics improve to a point where we could do it alone, obviously that's the best outcome for our shareholders. But there is a $390 million Australian capital on this. A fair amount of that will be debt because this is a market which is all contract. So that allow us to get debt. But we're looking for strategic partners, either as off-takers or partners to come in and help build the project. We're pretty open to really any outcome, provided it's a good outcome for the shareholders. And having KPMG, an international group, heading that up, it gives me a lot of confidence that we will certainly cast the net wide and see what we bring into the boat.
You did mention the economics of uranium and uranium mining. We've got the uranium price continuing to slide. We had the decommissioning of a couple of nuclear plants in the US and Scotland, I guess putting a bit of pressure on the price. So what's the outlook? You know, we've got a need to lower emissions. We've got ideological opposition in many parts of the world, yet in Australia, we're more than happy to keep digging it out and sending it overseas. I mean, how do you see this all ending up in this environment and given the price?
There's a couple of questions there. I think globally, the world is certainly turning towards nuclear power as a clean energy source. When you do the science, it actually is one of the cheapest, safest sources of power, of baseload power, which is an important source of power for any industrialized nation. You're quite right. Some reactors are closing, but the net closures versus openings is positive, and the growth is positive. A lot of the growth will come out of China, Asia, non-OECD countries. And you would have seen recently, there's a lot of news coming out of the United States, particularly with respect to small modular reactors. My belief is that the larger reactors will continue to be built by nations such as China, Korea. They're building reactors in the UAE. In fact, one of the reactors there just went online. Whereas the OECD countries, I believe, will start looking at the smaller modular reactors just because we're able to build those and then basically move those into position without having the huge construction costs.
And just to sort of finish up, Mike, you mentioned that you're in constant conversations with U.S. utilities. Do you have any actual offtake agreements in place, or is it still too early in the game, which, you know, I'm doing double-barreled questions a lot these days, but, you know, leads into timeline. I mean, when realistically do you think you're going to be getting this stuff out of the ground?
Sure. Well, the U.S. utilities, it's interesting. They're not in a hurry to contract at the moment. During the teens, we saw a lot of overproduction out of Kazakhstan, so they did build up their inventories. They do take a very long-term view on these things. Price is not a driver for them. It's about security of supply. And when they do come into the market, they tend to come in with a herd mentality, which seems to be going around the herd mentality. So basically, the U.S. utilities, when they start buying, we'll be ready for that. Now, we expect them to be coming back into the market. And this is the contract market, not a spot market, probably in the next 6 months. So we expect to be looking at financial investment decision in the middle of 21, and it's a 2-year construction period. So we'd be hoping to be digging ore out of the ground in 2023, which dovetails in quite nicely when the demand really hits the U.S. utilities. So it's the stars are kind of lining up for us quite nicely.
Keep us in the loop. Thanks for joining us today.
My pleasure. Thank you very much.
Mike Young there joining us from Vimy Resources.